At my father's funeral, my stepbrother stood at the podium, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "He always loved me more than you. He told me so every Christmas." The room fell deathly silent as he continued, "You were just the practice kid. The real legacy starts with me." I clutched my speech in my hands, torn between screaming and running out, until my father's attorney walked in with an envelope that changed everything. "My name's Kyle Walker.
I'm 34.
I live in Fort Worth, Texas. And 3 months ago, I buried my dad. That day, I lost more than just him. I lost what little belief I had left that family meant anything. My dad, Tom Walker, died of lung cancer. It hit him hard and fast. He didn't tell me how bad it was until it was too late. I remember him calling me, asking if I could come by. When I got there, he looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. His hands shook. He just said, "I don't think I've got much time." He was right. Within a month, he was gone. The funeral was held at St. Augustine's Chapel off Henderson Street. It was cloudy that morning. It felt like the whole sky was holding back tears. The chapel was full, mostly people I didn't recognize. Neighbors, old coworkers, people from his bowling league. And then there was my stepfamily. Dad married Susan when I was 15. She had a son, Mason. We were only about a year apart. I never liked the kid. Too smooth. Too full of himself. The kind of guy who would walk into a room like everyone owed him something. He moved into our house and acted like he owned the place within a week.
My dad, he let it happen.
He said, "Give it time, Kyle. You'll be like brothers." We were never like brothers. It started small. Mason would get out of chores. Then he started getting out of everything. He'd break something, I'd get blamed. He'd lie, I'd get questioned. I worked 2 jobs in college. Mason? Dad paid for him to go to Arizona State. New car. Off-campus apartment. Even sent him cash every other month just to stay comfortable.
Me?
I got a pat on the back and told, "That's how men build character." But I still loved my dad. Even when it hurt. Even when it felt unfair. Because I thought deep down he did care about me. Maybe he just didn't know how to show it the right way. The day of the funeral, I wore a plain black suit. Not expensive. Not tailored. Just what I could afford. I brought a folded piece of paper with me. My speech. It wasn't long. Just a few things I remembered about him: fishing at Eagle Mountain Lake, the time he helped me build my science project out of scrapwood, the way he'd sit on the porch with a beer and call me kiddo even when I was 30. I wasn't asked to speak, but I was ready just in case. But then Susan stood up and said, "Mason would like to share something." I watched him walk to the podium like it was his stage. He adjusted the mic and looked around, giving that fake half-smile he always had. And then, dead serious, he looked at me, right into my eyes. Like he planned it. "He always loved me more than you," he said. It hit like a slap across the face. He told me so every Christmas. "You were just the practice kid. The real legacy starts with me." The chapel went silent. Like actual silence.
No coughing. No sifting.
Just pure shock. A woman in the 3rd row gasped. My cousin Tommy whispered, "Is he serious?" My hands started shaking.
I was still holding my speech.
I hadn't even unfolded it yet. I could feel every pair of eyes on me. I don't know how I didn't lose it right there. Mason stood at the podium like he hadn't just spit in my face in front of 100 people. I looked at Susan. She didn't flinch, just looked at Mason like she was proud. I was seconds from walking out. Speech still clenched in my hand, heart in my throat, eyes burning. But then the back door opened, and in walked Mr. Kilpatrick, my dad's attorney. I hadn't seen him since the day after Dad died, when he handed me a copy of the death certificate and said, "There are things you should know, but they'll come out in time." He walked down the center aisle, not in a rush, but not wasting time either. He went straight to the altar and whispered something to the priest. The priest nodded and stepped aside. Kilpatrick turned to face everyone. He held up a white envelope. "I apologize for the interruption," he said, calm as ever. "But Mr. Thomas Walker gave me this. He instructed me to open and read it at the end of a service, before anyone made assumptions about his estate or intentions. He looked right at me, then at Mason. Given what was just said, I believe the timing is appropriate. Mason's jaw tightened. Susan stood up, whispering, "This is ridiculous," under her breath. Kilpatrick didn't care. He opened the envelope and pulled out a handwritten letter. My dad's handwriting. I'd know it anywhere. He began to read. And everything I thought I knew started to fall apart. Kilpatrick's voice was calm, but the words hit hard. "To my family and those gathered here today," he began. "If you're hearing this, I'm gone. I wrote this knowing there'd be questions, arguments, maybe worse. I've made choices, some of them good, some of them selfish. But I want one thing clear." He paused and looked up like he was checking if everyone was listening. You could hear the AC hum. That's how quiet it was. "My son Kyle is not the practice kid." A few people gasped. Mason shifted in his seat like he wanted to bolt. "Kyle, I know I wasn't always fair. I made mistakes. I tried to build something new with Susan and Mason, but I didn't always keep balance. I want it known that you were always my blood. My first. My only." Susan whispered something harsh under her breath. Kilpatrick kept reading. "To Mason, you came into my life when you were a teenager. I did what I could for you. Paid your tuition. Bought you things I couldn't afford when Kyle was younger. That was my guilt. But don't confuse money with love." Now people were really whispering. Some of Susan's church friends looked stunned. Others just looked down. "I'm sorry, Kyle, that I didn't say this more when I was alive. I thought you knew. I hoped you'd understand the silence." I didn't know what to feel. Relief? Anger? Sadness? All of it? None of it? Kilpatrick folded the letter, but didn't stop there. "There's more," he said. "There's the will." He pulled out a second document. In his final will, Thomas Walker made a clear distinction. The house, the savings, the business assets, all of it goes to Kyle. Mason stood up. "What?" Susan grabbed his arm, trying to calm him, but he pulled away. "This is some kind of joke. He told me, he said I'd take over the business." "He changed the will 2 weeks before his death," Kilpatrick said. "I was there." "He was of sound mind." "It's signed, witnessed, and notarized." Mason's face turned red. He was high on morphine. He didn't know what he was saying. "No," Kilpatrick said. He was clear. "In fact, he had one specific note about you." He unfolded another small piece of paper. It said, "Mason doesn't get the company. He never earned it. I gave him chances. He wasted every one. If he fights this, sue him for damages." I swear the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. No one said a word. Susan's mouth was open, but nothing came out. Mason just stared at the floor like it was going to open and swallow him whole. Then Susan stood up, shaky but furious. "You can't do this. We were married. I have rights." Kilpatrick nodded. "You do. You're entitled to your half of the joint bank account and any property jointly owned. That's about $18,000. 18. She looked like she'd been slapped. Kilpatrick continued. "The house, the workshop, the insurance policies, and the trust fund, all listed under Thomas's name only. All designated for Kyle." That's when Mason lost it. He stormed down the aisle and got in my face. "This is your doing," he hissed. "You poisoned him against me." "No," I said. "You did that all on your own." He stared at me, breathing heavy. Then he shoved past me and left the chapel. Susan followed a few seconds later, but not before glaring at me like I'd stolen something from her. After that, the service just kind of fell apart. People whispered. Some gave me awkward nods or pats on the shoulder. Some avoided me completely. I didn't give my speech. I didn't need to. Dad had spoken for me. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. After the funeral, I thought things might settle down. Maybe Mason and Susan would stew for a while, try to contest the will, and then give up when they saw how solid it was. I underestimated them. 2 days later, I got a letter taped to my door. No stamp, no envelope, just a folded piece of paper with a few words written in thick, black marker. "You don't deserve any of it. You'll lose it all soon. No name. No signature. But I didn't need one. Mason. I took it straight to Kilpatrick, who told me not to engage. They're emotional, he said. Let the lawyers handle it. But then things started happening. First, I found my dad's workshop door pried open. Nothing taken, just tools scattered and drawers pulled out. Then the gas line to the outdoor grill was cut, sloppy, like someone tried to make a point without finishing the job. Next came the rumors. People from the church started calling me, asking why I was selling my dad's equipment to pay off gambling debts. I hadn't sold a thing. I didn't gamble. But Mason and Susan were good at playing dirty in small towns. Plant a seed, let it spread. It got worse when I went to Dad's office downtown. The small business he ran, a little HVAC supply store, was locked.
Padlocked.
I called Kilpatrick. They've filed an injunction, he said, claiming you forged the will. It's nonsense, but it'll stall everything. You won't be able to sell, operate, or even access company funds until we go to court. They weren't fighting for what they thought was theirs. They were fighting to ruin me. That's when I started digging. I went through Dad's office, what I could get into. I pulled old files, old receipts, anything I could find. And one night, going through a dusty box in his attic, I found a USB stick taped to the bottom of an old cigar box. It was labeled, Mason, just in case. My hands went cold. I plugged it into my laptop. Inside were dozens of files, PDFs, screenshots, videos. It took me 2 hours to go through it all. Emails from Mason to suppliers, requesting cash under-the-table deals. Fake invoices. Equipment going missing from the inventory. Mason had been skimming money from the business for almost 3 years. There was even a video. A security cam from the back room at the supply store. It showed Mason and a guy I didn't recognize loading boxes into a pickup at midnight. Boxes marked warranty claim, do not remove. They were stealing from Dad. Stealing and reselling. There were also voicemails. My dad confronting Mason, yelling at him, demanding he come clean. Mason yelling back.
Threats.
Screams. And then silence. I called Kilpatrick. I need this on the record, I said. All of it. We submitted everything to the court. The theft. The fraud. The footage. The whole mess. But Mason didn't go quietly. He showed up at my place the next night. Banged on the door at midnight. I didn't answer. He shouted through the door. You think this changes anything? You think you're gonna win? He was nothing. You're nothing. You'll always be second best. Then he spat on my porch and left. I recorded it. Every word. Just in case. Susan stayed quieter. But I knew she was behind the rumors. One of Dad's old friends told me she'd been calling people, saying I manipulated him while he was dying. That I brainwashed him into changing the will. But then I found something else. At the very bottom of that same USB stick, buried in a folder labeled Personal, was a scanned letter. Dated 2 years ago. It was a letter from my dad to me. Never mailed. Never printed. Just a draft he'd saved. In it he said this. I've made you carry too much for too long. You always took it. You never asked for more. You never guilt me. I wish I could go back and treat you like the man you are, not the boy I overlooked. I hope someday you understand why I gave them so much, because I felt like I failed you. And it turns out, that failure just kept repeating. It ended with,
I'm sorry, kiddo.
But it's your legacy now. Make it right. That's when I realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about taking back what they tried to take from him. And from me. But they still had one more move left. Prompt, add more story twist, but still keep the details consistent. No ending yet. The practice kit. Part 4. Buried secrets and blood ties. 3 weeks after the funeral, I got a call from Kilpatrick. He sounded tense. You should come to my office, he said.
Now.
Bring a clear head. When I got there, he handed me a manila folder. Inside was a DNA test. I stared at the names. Thomas Walker, Mason Kelly, DNA probability of paternity, 99.98%. I felt like I'd been kicked in the chest. What the hell is this? I asked. Kilpatrick looked me in the eyes. Your father requested a DNA test about a year ago. He had suspicions. He didn't tell anyone. Not even me, until after he passed. I couldn't speak. He flipped the folder open to a second sheet. A notarized letter from my dad, dated 4 months before his death. If Mason is proven to be my biological son, I need you to know, Kyle, it changes nothing. Blood doesn't mean loyalty. Love does. And you were always the one who stood by me, even when I didn't deserve it. Kilpatrick took a breath. We think Susan knew. We think she kept it from everyone. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Mason, who I always believed was just the stepson, the outsider, was actually my half-brother. And Dad found out just before he died. I didn't know whether to scream or laugh. That smug bastard, who tormented me my whole life, had the one thing I thought gave me an edge, blood. And it didn't matter, because even after finding out, Dad still left everything to me. But it raised a new question. Why did Dad order the test at all? That's when I went back into the files on the USB drive. I started looking not just at Mason, but at Susan. She'd been married before. That I knew. But buried in one of the files, an old scanned email, was something Dad had written to a friend of his. It said, I think she lied to me. I think Mason is mine, and she's known all along. If I had known earlier, maybe things would have been different. But it's too late to go back. She kept it from me for nearly 2 decades. I found divorce papers from Susan's first marriage, filed just 4 months after Mason was born. She and Dad were dating by then. There were photos of them together with baby Mason. He was Dad's son. But Susan had hidden it. And now that the will was final and the court had sided with me thanks to the fraud evidence, Susan and Mason were desperate. That's when the vandalism started. Someone slashed my tires.
Twice.
Someone spray-painted thief on the shop door. One night, I came home to find a brick through my window. It had a note wrapped around it.
He was ours.
You stole him. Payback is coming. I reported it to the police, but nothing stuck.
No cameras. No witnesses.
Then came the final hit. Kilpatrick called me again. They filed a motion to claim wrongful influence, he said. They're saying you manipulated him in his final weeks, when he was on pain meds. I couldn't believe it. After all the proof, after all the lies they were caught in, they were still trying to burn it all down. But then something unexpected happened. The nurse. Her name was Rachel. She was one of Dad's hospice caregivers. She reached out to me after seeing my name in the local paper tied to the court fight. She told me, your dad talked to me a lot. About you. About Mason. About regrets. We met for coffee. She handed me her phone. It had recordings. She'd recorded parts of her conversations with Dad, something she started doing for legal protection after a previous family accused her of negligence. She got his permission each time. And in one clip, Dad's voice was clear. Mason's my son. Susan lied about it. I knew the moment I saw that DNA report. But I won't change the will. He didn't earn it. Kyle did. Another clip, even clearer. He stole from me.
Lit.
Disrespected everything I built. My name, my business. He thinks blood gives him a claim? Let him try. I hope Kyle burns it all down if he has to. Rachel also had notes, handwritten instructions from Dad telling her to make sure Kyle got everything, that Susan and Mason were not to be trusted. With all this, Kilpatrick prepared to counter their motion. But before we could even file, Mason showed up at my door again. Only this time, he wasn't angry. He was drunk. He leaned against the doorframe, reeking of whiskey, eyes red. You win, he slurred. You win, man. You got it all. I didn't answer. But you know what? He said, swaying. He still loved me. You think this was revenge?
Nah.
This was guilt. He gave it all to you because he couldn't face what he did to me. I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. Go home, Mason. He staggered off, but I knew it wasn't over. Susan hadn't shown her hand yet. And that scared me more than anything. 2 weeks passed. The court rejected Mason and Susan's motion. The recordings, the video, the files, everything backed me up. Their claims of manipulation fell apart. My father's final wishes stood. I had full ownership of the business, the house, the trust, everything. But I didn't feel like I'd won anything. The business was bleeding money from all the damage Mason had done. I had to fire 2 guys who'd been helping him skim. I was getting hate mail from people who believed Susan's lies. And the house. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a grave. One night, I stood on the back porch holding a beer, staring at the sky, wondering if this was what victory was supposed to feel like. That's when I heard glass shatter. I ran around the side of the house. The workshop, Dad's sacred place, was on fire. I grabbed the hose, but it was already too late. Flames ate through the wood, fast and hungry. The fire department showed up 20 minutes later, but the place was gone by then. When they finished, the chief pulled me aside. Found a rag soaked in gasoline behind the building. Pretty clear it was arson. I filed a report, gave them names. I didn't have proof it was Mason or Susan, but I didn't need a signed confession to know. Still, they walked away clean. And that was the last straw. I had tried to play it straight. Let the court speak. Let my father's wishes speak. But that fire? That was spitting on his grave. That was war. So, I made a call. Rachel, the hospice nurse, had told me something else. Something I hadn't used in court. Susan had once tried to get Dad to change his will a year before his death. She even called Rachel, pretending to be concerned about Tom's mental state. Tried to get her to say he was confused and unstable. Rachel recorded that call too. She gave me the file. So, I gave it to Kilpatrick. And we turned around and filed our lawsuit.
Fraud.
Harassment. Arson suspicion. And wrongful interference with end-of-life decisions. It was ugly. It dragged on for 6 months. But it worked. The judge ordered Susan to pay $180,000 in damages. It broke her. She had to sell her house, cash out her retirement. Mason got nothing. No appeal.
No inheritance.
Nothing. I didn't gloat. Not at first. But when I saw them one last time, outside the courthouse, something inside me turned. Mason looked worn, like life had aged him 10 years. Susan refused to look at me. She was crying, makeup smeared, muttering something under her breath about God punishing ungrateful children. I walked up to Mason and handed him something. It was the original letter from Dad. The one where he called me his legacy. You always wanted proof? I said. There it is. He didn't say a word, just ripped it in half and walked away. I turned to Susan. He loved you, even after everything. But you made damn sure he died full of regret. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She had nothing left to say. I left them there, on that sidewalk. 2 broken people who spent their whole lives pretending to be more than they were. As for me, I rebuilt the workshop from scratch. Same dimensions, same layout. But it's not just a shrine to Dad anymore. It's mine. I renamed the company Walker and Son. Not because of blood, but because of loyalty. I've made mistakes. I let Dad's silence fester into resentment. I didn't fight back sooner. I thought love had to be earned quietly. Maybe that was wrong. But I'll say this. They called me the practice kid. But in the end, I was the one who carried the name. The real legacy? It was never in the money. It was in me. The practice kid. Epilogue. What comes after fire a year later, things finally started to feel normal. The business was steady. I hired 2 new guys. Real workers, not Mason's buddies. We rebuilt trust with our clients. The town saw the truth eventually, once the lies stopped echoing.
But the scars didn't fade that fast.
Every time I drove past Susan's old house, now empty, overgrown, and silent, I felt a strange mix of justice and pity. She disappeared after the court ruling. Word was she moved in with a cousin down in Lubbock. Mason, though, he didn't vanish. He just sank. I got a call from a friend 6 months ago. Said Mason was working at a pawn shop outside of town. Minimum wage. Still cocky, still bitter. Still blaming me for stealing his future. He never saw that it was never his to begin with. One time, I walked into that pawn shop. He looked up, didn't say a word. I didn't either. I just laid a screwdriver on the counter, the kind Dad used to carry in his front pocket every day, and said, "Thought this might feel familiar." Then I walked out. Not out of spite. Out of closure. I didn't need an apology from him. I didn't need him to change. I just needed to know he saw me, even for a second, as the man who outlasted him. Not because I was smarter. Not stronger. Just because I never lied. I never schemed. I never let hate become my compass. People ask sometimes why I kept the business. Why I didn't just sell everything and walk away. Simple. Because someone has to stand for the truth when everyone else lies. Because I wasn't the practice kid. I was the one who stayed. The one who finished. The one who earned it. And that's the legacy worth carrying.